Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. The pristine silence of deep space was broken by the hum of the Argonaut, a lone Earth exploration vessel navigating the uncharted expanse beyond Proxima Centauri. Commander Jake Marlowe, a rugged veteran of Earth's fledgling interstellar program, leaned back in his seat, sipping lukewarm coffee as the onboard AI rattled off sensor data. Jake preferred his missions quiet. No mysterious anomalies, no hostile encounters, and certainly no surprises. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Commander, the AI's synthetic voice intoned, an unidentified vessel is approaching at high velocity. Probable intercept course? Jake's coffee cup froze midway to his lips. His heart rate spiked. In the black vacuum of space, unidentified rarely meant friendly. Let's see it, he ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sleek, obsidian craft hurtling toward the Argonaut. Its surface shimmered unnaturally, as if refusing to fully obey the laws of physics. Jake's first instinct was to initiate evasive maneuvers, but a sudden burst of light engulfed the cockpit. "Brace!" he yelled, gripping the controls as the Argonaut shuddered violently. When the light subsided, Jake found himself staring at a figure standing in the middle of his ship. She, at least Jake assumed it was a she, was tall, her skin a pale, iridescent hue that shifted subtly as she moved. Her hair cascaded like liquid metal, and her eyes glowed a soft violet. She wore a form-fitting suit that seemed alive, its surface pulsing faintly as though synchronized with her breathing. "Greetings, Earthling," she said, her voice like silk woven with static. "You are in possession of something intriguing." Jake blinked, his survival instincts fighting against the surrealism of the moment. "Who the hell are you, and how did you get aboard my ship?" The woman tilted her head, her expression a mixture of amusement and mild annoyance. "Names are irrelevant. What matters is that you possess something valuable, something I require." Jake tensed. The Argonaut wasn't carrying anything beyond standard exploration gear and supplies. What could she possibly mean? "You've got the wrong guy, lady," he replied, his hand inching toward the emergency distress button. "This is a research mission. Nothing here worth stealing." She laughed, a melodic, almost hypnotic sound that sent shivers down Jake's spine. "Oh, I'm not here to steal, Commander. I'm here to claim." Before Jake could react, she closed the distance between them in an instant, her movements so fluid and fast they defied comprehension. She reached out and with a single effortless motion tore his utility jacket clean off. The fabric disintegrated in her hands, the fibers dissolving into sparkling motes that hovered briefly before vanishing. "Hey?" Jake barked, stumbling back. "What the hell are you doing?" The woman examined him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "Humans, you've evolved so far and yet you remain bound by such primitive shells." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Let's see what lies beneath." Jake's mind raced. This wasn't just a breach of protocol, it was a violation of every interstellar law Earth had drafted to govern first contact. He had no idea what she wanted, but he was sure he wasn't about to let her strip him bare in the name of alien curiosity. With a surge of adrenaline, Jake lunged for the emergency beacon. But the alien was faster, her hand snapping out to grab his wrist. Her grip was ironclad yet oddly gentle, as though she were holding back immense strength. "Such resilience," she murmured, her glowing eyes narrowing. "But your resistance is unnecessary." Jake gritted his teeth, yanking his arm free with every ounce of strength he could muster. He stumbled backward, his hand finally slamming down on the beacon. Red lights flared throughout the cockpit, and the ship's alarm blared to life. "Distress signal activated," the AI announced. The alien didn't flinch. If anything, she seemed more amused than before. "A valiant effort, Commander. But no one will reach you in time." Jake's pulse pounded in his ears. He had faced countless dangers during his career, solar storms, engine failures, even a pirate skirmish, but nothing had prepared him for this. He reached for the stun baton strapped to his belt, praying it would have some effect on this enigmatic intruder. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at him. "If you need something, we can negotiate." Her expression softened, though her predatory edge remained. "Oh, but we are negotiating, Jake Marlowe. This is simply my way of establishing terms." Without warning, the ship lurched again, this time from an external force. Jake staggered, his baton slipping from his grasp. The alien didn't seem to notice, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity that felt almost magnetic. As the ship's system struggled to stabilize, Jake realized he wasn't just dealing with an alien visitor. This was a test, A confrontation with a being whose motives and capabilities were far beyond his understanding. And he was far from ready for what came next. The Argonaut groaned as its stabilizers struggled against the external force that gripped it. Jake barely had time to find his footing before the alien woman moved again, faster than his eyes could track. In an instant, she was standing inches away, her unsettlingly perfect face tilted as though appraising him. "You humans," she said, her voice silky, always so quick to react with aggression or fear. "Is this how you greet the unknown?" Jake stepped back instinctively, his hand brushing the edge of the control console. "You show up uninvited, rip my jacket apart, and now you're questioning me?" He shot back, his voice edged with defiance. "I'd say I'm reacting pretty well." The alien let out a soft chuckle, her glowing violet eyes scanning him with unnerving precision. "Your defiance is commendable, Commander Marlowe. But your primitive tools and bravado will do little to shield you from me." She extended her hand, palm up, and with a faint shimmer, a glowing orb of light materialized above it. Jake watched in a mix of awe and apprehension as the orb pulsed, radiating waves of energy that seemed to resonate deep within his chest. "What is that?" he demanded, forcing his voice to remain steady. "A device to measure potential," she replied cryptically, her gaze locking onto his. "You are an anomaly among your kind, Commander. A flame in the void. I must know why." Before Jake could respond, the orb flared, and he felt a sudden, overwhelming warmth wash over him. His muscles tensed involuntarily as the energy seemed to reach inside him, probing, searching. His memories flashed before his eyes. His childhood fascination with the stars, his grueling training to become an explorer, and the lonely nights spent staring out into the vast emptiness of space. "Stop it," he growled, fighting against the invisible force. The alien frowned, her expression shifting to one of mild surprise. "Curious," she murmured, the orb's glow dimming slightly. "You resist even now. Few have the will to do so." Jake's breathing was labored, but his mind raced for a strategy. He had to buy time, keep her talking. "Why does that matter? What do you want from me?" Her gaze softened, though the intensity behind her eyes remained. "You are unique, Commander. Your species clings to the fringes of the cosmos, yet you possess a spark, an indomitable drive to survive, to overcome. I seek to understand that spark." Jake's jaw tightened. "By tearing my ship apart and invading my mind?" She took a step closer, and Jake felt the strange warmth intensify. "Your physical vessel is irrelevant," she said, her voice almost tender. "It is your essence I seek, the core of what makes you human." For a moment, Jake's fear was overshadowed by confusion. Was she a scientist? A predator? Or something else entirely? "If you wanted to talk," he said, his voice steadying, "you could have sent a message like a civilized species. Why the theatrics?" Her lips curled into a faint smile. "Civilized? That is a relative term, Earthling. My methods are efficient. Your kind would waste cycles posturing and debating." "Maybe we posture and debate because we value consent," Jake snapped, his anger flaring. "You don't just take what you want from people." Her expression shifted again, this time to one of genuine curiosity. "Consent," she repeated, as though tasting the word for the first time. "A curious construct. Yet your resistance intrigues me." Jake seized the moment, his mind scrambling for a way to turn the tide. "If I intrigue you so much, maybe we can make a deal. You stop whatever this is, and I'll answer your questions willingly." The alien's eyes narrowed, the glow of the orb dimming further. "You would offer yourself willingly? A bold gambit, Commander. But trust is a rare commodity in the void." "Then consider it a lesson in humanity," Jake countered. "We may be primitive by your standards, but we're not without principles. You want answers? You'll have to earn them." She studied him in silence for a long moment, the weight of her gaze almost tangible. Finally the orb vanished, dissolving into faint wisps of light. Jake exhaled, relief washing over him as the oppressive warmth dissipated. "Very well," she said, her voice calm yet tinged with intrigue. "I accept your terms. But know this, Commander, my patience is not infinite." Jake straightened, his confidence bolstered by the small victory. "I wouldn't have it any other way. Now how about we start with names?" The alien tilted her head again, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. "You may call me Lysara." "Lysara?" Jake repeated, committing the name to memory. "All right, Lysara. First question, why me? Of all the humans you could have chosen, why did you target my ship?" Lysara's smile returned, enigmatic and unnerving. "You were chosen because your resonance is exceptional. Anomalous. You burn brighter than the rest. Jake frowned, the cryptic answer raising more questions than it resolved. Resonance? Exceptional? Care to elaborate? All in time, she said, her voice carrying a note of finality. For now, Commander, you must prepare. What lies ahead will test the very limits of your humanity. Before Jake could press her further, the ship jolted violently, alarms blaring once more. The proximity sensors lit up, displaying a swarm of unfamiliar vessels converging on their location. Jake's stomach sank. Lysara, he said, his voice sharp, what the hell is that? Her expression darkened, and for the first time, Jake saw a flicker of concern in her glowing eyes. Others, she said quietly. They found us. The Argonaut trembled as warning klaxons blared, the ship's sensors screaming about the incoming vessels. Jake's hands flew across the console, bringing the external cameras online. The display filled with ominous shapes. Sleek, black ships shaped like arrowheads, their surfaces bristling with alien weaponry. Who are they? Jake demanded, his voice tight with urgency. Lysara's eyes narrowed as she studied the screen. Hunter drones. Servants of the Vextran Dominion. They will not parley. Jake's jaw tightened. Perfect. Just what I needed. His fingers danced across the controls, powering up the Argonaut's engines and defensive systems. Though the vessel wasn't built for combat, it wasn't entirely unarmed. The ship's kinetic shields hummed to life, and its small arsenal of pulse cannons locked onto the closest drone. AI, Jake barked, plot me a course out of here. Fast. Calculating evasive trajectory, the AI replied smoothly. Lysara didn't move, her glowing eyes fixed on the swarm closing in. Running will only delay the inevitable, she said, her tone eerily calm. Jake turned to her, incredulous. You've got a better idea? Or are you planning to stand there looking dramatic while we get blasted to pieces? Her gaze flicked to him, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. Your fire amuses me, Earthling. Very well, allow me to assist. Before Jake could ask what she meant, Lysara raised her hand. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and an ethereal field of light enveloped her body. She extended her palm toward the screen, and the ship's lights flickered as an unseen force rippled outward. What are you doing? Jake demanded, gripping the console for balance as the ship shuddered. Lysara didn't answer. Instead, the drones on the display began to slow, their formation faltering. One by one, they veered off course, colliding with each other or spinning aimlessly into the void. Jake stared in astonishment. You're disabling them? Neutralizing, Lysara corrected. Their programming is rudimentary. They cannot withstand a higher resonance field. The Argonaut surged forward as the AI completed its calculations. Evasive trajectory plotted, the system announced. Engaging warp in 10 seconds. Jake slammed the throttle forward. The ship's engines roared, and the stars outside the viewport blurred as the Argonaut accelerated. Lysara lowered her hand, the shimmering field around her fading. That was impressive, Jake admitted grudgingly, though his grip on the controls remained tight. But don't think this means I trust you. I expect nothing less, Lysara replied, her smirk returning. The ship lurched again as a sudden impact rocked the hull. Jake's stomach dropped as new alarms blared. Hull integrity compromised, the AI announced. One drone has attached to the exterior. Jake gritted his teeth. Of course one got through. Why wouldn't it? Lysara turned, her expression unusually serious. The Vextran drones are relentless. If we do not dislodge it, they will track us across the stars. And how do you suggest we do that? Jake snapped. We're already running on borrowed time. Lysara moved to the viewport, her hands tracing an invisible pattern in the air. A glowing sigil appeared before her, its intricate lines pulsing with energy. Your primitive weapons will not suffice. I must confront it directly. Jake blinked. Confront it? What does that even mean? It means, Lysara said, turning to face him, you must open the airlock. He stared at her as though she'd just suggested venting the entire ship. That's insane. You'll get sucked into space. Her gaze was steady, unyielding. I will not. Your concern is touching, Commander, but misplaced. Open the airlock. Jake hesitated. Every protocol screamed against the idea, but the drone hammering at his hull wasn't going to wait for a debate. With a resigned sigh, he toggled the controls for the rear airlock. Airlock opening in 10 seconds, the AI announced. Lysara moved with purpose, her glowing sigil expanding and wrapping around her like a second skin. She glanced back at Jake, a faint smile playing on her lips. Do not falter, Commander. This will not be the end. Before he could respond, the airlock opened and Lysara stepped into the void. Through the external cameras, Jake watched in disbelief as Lysara glided toward the drone. She moved with eerie grace, her shimmering field shielding her from the harsh vacuum of space. The drone swiveled, its weapons firing streams of plasma at her, but the energy dissipated harmlessly against her shield. Lysara extended her hands, and the glowing sigil expanded, encasing the drone in a cocoon of light. The alien machine thrashed violently, its systems sparking and failing as Lysara's field overwhelmed it. Within moments, the drone was nothing more than a lifeless husk drifting in space. Jake exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest easing. AI, status report. The threat has been neutralized, the system replied. Hull integrity stabilizing. Moments later, the airlock hissed shut, and Lysara re-entered the ship, her glowing shield fading. She looked at Jake, her expression calm but tinged with satisfaction. "You're welcome," she said simply. Jake shook his head, a mixture of frustration and admiration in his voice. "You're either the best ally I've ever had or the biggest headache. I can't decide which." Lysara's smirk returned. "Perhaps I am both." As the Argonaut slipped into warp, Jake realized that whatever this strange encounter was, it was far from over. And the stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. The hum of the warp engines settled into a steady rhythm, filling the silence in the cockpit of the Argonaut. Jake sat at the console, his fingers tapping anxiously on the edge of the control panel. Lysara leaned against the bulkhead, her glowing violet eyes fixed on him, her presence both unnerving and impossible to ignore. "What was that back there?" Jake finally asked, breaking the tension. "Those drones didn't come out of nowhere. Did they track you here?" Lysara's expression was unreadable, her head tilting slightly as though weighing her response. "The Vextran Dominion has long sought me," she said. "They are relentless in their pursuit, but their motives are not your concern." "Not my concern?" Jake shot back, his voice rising. "Those things almost tore my ship apart. I think I deserve some answers." Lysara pushed away from the bulkhead and stepped closer, her movements smooth and deliberate. "Very well, Earthling. You have earned a sliver of truth." Jake leaned forward, his frustration tempered by curiosity. "I'm listening." Lysara's gaze softened, and for a moment she seemed almost human. The Vextran Dominion is a vast empire that thrives on domination. They assimilate advanced technologies and enslave civilizations, feeding their insatiable hunger for power. I was once part of them, a weapon they created to subjugate worlds. Jake's eyebrows shot up. "You're saying you used to work for them?" "Work?" she repeated with a faint hint of disdain. "No. I was engineered by them. A construct of their ambition. But I am no longer bound to their will. I escaped, and for that they seek to destroy me." Jake leaned back, the weight of her words sinking in. "So you're a fugitive. And now I'm caught in the middle of this?" Lysara smiled faintly, though there was no humor in it. "You are more than caught, Commander. You are entangled." He ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the revelation. "If they're so powerful, how are you still alive? What makes you different?" "I was their pinnacle creation," Lysara said, her voice tinged with both pride and sorrow. "A being of resonance, capable of manipulating energy and thought. But their mistake was giving me the capacity to question my purpose." Jake studied her, his mind racing with possibilities. "And what's your purpose now? Why show up on my ship?" Lysara hesitated, a rare vulnerability crossing her face. "Because you, Commander Marlowe, are unlike any other human I have encountered. Your resonance burns brighter, louder. It is compelling." Jake frowned. "You keep saying that. Resonance. What does that mean?" Lysara raised her hand, and a faint glow surrounded her fingers. "All beings emit energy, an echo of their existence. Yours is unusually strong, as if you are tethered to something far greater than yourself. It is a trait the Vextrans seek to exploit." Jake's stomach turned. "So what? You're saying I'm some kind of cosmic beacon?" "In a sense," she said. "Your resonance may hold the key to something the Vextrans cannot comprehend. Something they fear." Jake stood abruptly, pacing the cockpit. "Great. So now I'm a target for an alien empire. This just keeps getting better." Lysara watched him, her expression unreadable once more. "You may curse your role, but it is not without significance. Your kind has always been underestimated, scrappy survivors in a galaxy of titans. Yet your resilience, your defiance has changed the course of history before. Perhaps it will again." Jake stopped, her words sparking a flicker of determination within him. "If that's true, then what's your plan?" You can't outrun them forever. She stepped closer, her presence commanding yet strangely comforting. I cannot, she admitted. But with you I may stand a chance. Together we can strike at the heart of the Dominion and unravel their power. Your resonance could tip the balance? Jake crossed his arms, skeptical. And what happens to me in all this? You've already torn my ship apart and dragged me into your war. Why should I trust you? Lysara's eyes glowed brighter, her voice softening. Because without me you will not survive what's coming. The Dominion knows of you now, Commander. They will not stop until they have you. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Jake exhaled slowly, his mind churning with doubt and reluctant resolve. If I agree to help you, we do this on my terms. No more surprises, no more cryptic talk. We work together or not at all. Lysara inclined her head, a hint of respect in her gaze. Very well, Commander. We are allies then. Before Jake could respond, the ship's alarms blared again. The AI's voice cut through the noise, tinged with urgency. Multiple vessels detected on intercept course. Estimated time to contact. 4 minutes? Jake's blood ran cold. They're back already? Lysara's expression hardened, her glowing eyes blazing like twin stars. The Dominion's reach is vast. They will send wave after wave until they succeed. Jake clenched his fists, adrenaline surging through his veins. Then we'd better give them something to fear. He moved to the controls, his mind racing with strategies. Lysara stepped beside him, her voice calm but resolute. Prepare yourself, Earthling. This is only the beginning. As the Argonaut roared into action, Jake realized there was no turning back. Whatever the Dominion wanted, whatever role his strange resonance played, he would face it head-on. Humanity's resilience had been tested before, and this time, it would burn brighter than ever. The Argonaut bucked and rattled as it shot through the void, a trail of blue and green streaking behind it as the engines flared to life. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as the display flickered, showing the incoming enemy vessels closing in on their position with frightening speed. He glanced at Lysara, who stood by the viewport, her form bathed in the soft glow of the ship's emergency lights, eyes fixed ahead. Are we ready? Jake asked, his voice low but resolute. Lysara didn't answer immediately. Her gaze remained intense, almost as if she were listening to something beyond the ship itself. Finally she spoke, her tone colder than before. We are not ready for what is to come, Commander. But we will face it regardless. Jake cursed under his breath. I don't have time for half-baked answers, Lysara. I need you to be clear. She turned to face him then, her expression unreadable. Clear, Commander? You want clarity in the face of extinction? The words hit harder than any insult. Jake flinched but didn't back down. I didn't sign up for this war, but here I am. So if you have a plan, spill it. Lysara stepped closer, her movements fluid as ever. My plan is to survive. For both of us. Her eyes flicked to the monitors, where the enemy ships were now displayed in full, sleek, angular vessels that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. These ships belonged to the Dominion's most feared enforcers. The Vextran elite. They are here for you. Jake's throat tightened as the incoming ships loomed larger on the screen. And what happens if we don't stop them? They will capture you, Lysara replied coldly, and bring you before the Dominion's council. They will tear your mind apart, extract every ounce of resonance from you, and use it to further their empire. They will break you, Commander. All for their greater good. Jake clenched his fists, determination rising. Not happening. Not unless you can do the impossible, Lysara said, a hint of admiration in her voice. The Vextran are no ordinary foes. We may have power, but even together we are few against many. A new wave of alarm sounds blared, and the ship's hull groaned as the first salvo of plasma missiles rocketed toward them. Without thinking, Jake slammed his palm against the emergency shields button, and the ship's kinetic defenses flared to life, absorbing the initial blast. We've got seconds, Jake muttered, pulling up the tactical interface. AI, give me an evasive maneuver. Now. Calculating evasive trajectory, the AI responded. Optimal trajectory will cause a risk of hull damage. Do it anyway. The Argonaut veered sharply to the left, skimming dangerously close to a rogue asteroid field. Jagged rocks whipped past the ship's sides, forcing Jake to focus entirely on keeping the vessel from tearing itself apart. A new set of plasma bursts flashed past them, narrowly missing the rear of the ship. Lysara stood perfectly still, seemingly unaffected by the chaos around her. Your actions are impulsive, she noted, her voice betraying a hint of admiration. But effective. Jake shot her a look of frustration. I don't have time to be subtle, Lysara. I need a way to stop those ships, not just outrun them. Lysara finally moved, walking toward the console, her fingers dancing over the holographic controls. She closed her eyes briefly, and a shimmering aura enveloped her, radiating like a pulse of energy that Jake could feel in his chest. "What are you doing?" he asked, feeling the air in the cockpit thrum with the raw power of her presence. "I will destabilize their weapons," she said, her voice focused. "It will buy us time." Jake didn't have a chance to question her further. The ship lurched again, this time as a massive shockwave reverberated through the hull. Lysara's eyes flashed open, and in that instant the energy from her field shot out in tendrils toward the enemy ships. On the view screen, Jake watched in awe as the Vextran vessels faltered mid-attack. The missiles they had fired began to malfunction, their guidance systems scrambling before the projectiles veered off course and exploded harmlessly in space. "I've disabled their targeting systems," Lysara said, lowering her hands as the aura around her faded. "But this will not last." "Enough time to escape?" Jake asked, his voice tight. "Barely. You must make the jump to a nearby system. A place where they cannot track us." Jake's mind raced as he punched in coordinates, targeting a nearby nebula that could obscure their signature from the Vextran sensors. "Get ready for warp," he said, gritting his teeth. "This is going to be a rough ride." Lysara nodded silently, stepping back into her previous position. The ship's engines roared as they powered up, and the stars outside began to stretch into lines as the Argonaut shot forward, slipping into the folds of warp space. The moment they made the jump, the oppressive atmosphere in the cockpit seemed to lift. The ship's alarms quieted, and the screens turned from flashing red to a steady blue. Jake let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Status report," he barked at the AI. "Safe in warp, Commander. We have evaded the Vextran vessels. We are on course for the nebula cluster." Lysara's eyes glowed faintly in the dim cockpit light, her gaze steady as she looked at Jake. "For now you are safe. But the Dominion is relentless. They will regroup and come after you again." Jake ran a hand over his face, exhausted but resolute. "We can't keep running forever. We need a plan to fight back, not just survive." Lysara studied him for a long moment. "You're right. Survival alone is not enough. But your resonance, Commander, it holds power beyond what you know. I can help you unlock that power. Together we can defeat the Dominion." Jake's mind spun with possibilities. He was no hero, no soldier of destiny, but the stakes were too high to back down now. The war wasn't just about his survival anymore, it was about stopping an empire from enslaving humanity. And he'd be damned if he let that happen. "We'll need allies," Jake said, his voice gaining strength. "We can't do this alone." Lysara inclined her head. "I know a place. A world where those who resist the Dominion hide. We will find them, and together we will make our stand." Jake nodded, determination hardening in his chest. "Then let's go find them." The Argonaut drifted through the void, its engines quiet as they moved farther from the threat. Jake sat in the cockpit, staring out at the vast empty space, but his mind was anything but empty. He'd barely processed everything that had happened. The alien warship that nearly obliterated him, Lysara's true nature, the Dominion's overwhelming power, but now that he had a moment to breathe, the gravity of the situation was undeniable. Lysara stood near the rear of the cockpit, her back to him, looking out at the stars. The soft glow of her alien aura pulsed faintly, an ever-present reminder of just how little he understood about what was happening, and what she truly was. "How far are we from the world you mentioned?" Jake asked, not looking away from the stars. Lysara turned toward him, her violet eyes focused and sharp. "We are nearing the edge of Dominion-controlled space. The world I spoke of is in a neutral zone, one that the Dominion has long disregarded, but it is a sanctuary for those who resist." Jake raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound like this world's some kind of secret haven. Why wouldn't they have wiped it out already?" She gave a small, grim smile. "Because the world itself is not easily found. It exists in a location the Dominion cannot reach without precise coordinates, and even then the area is heavily protected by cloaking fields and interdimensional distortions. It is not a place they can simply destroy." Jake frowned, trying to piece it all together. "So, they've managed to hide from the Dominion all this time? Who else is there besides you?" "The resistance is scattered but strong. They come from many different worlds, from species that have been oppressed by the Dominion's rule. Some are fighters. Some are engineers. Others are like me, escapees, survivors who know the Dominion's methods. Together we can form a force capable of opposing them." Jake's chest tightened. "And what am I supposed to do?" You keep saying my resonance is important. What does that even mean? I'm not exactly a super soldier. Lysara's expression softened, and she took a few steps toward him, her presence commanding but strangely comforting. You do not need to be a super soldier. Your resonance is a kind of energy, an innate strength that flows through you, something the Dominion fears. It is not something easily understood even by those of us who can manipulate such forces. But I can help you harness it. Jake met her gaze. How? Her lips quirked into a faint smile. The first step is understanding your own power. It is a process, a discovery. But there is little time. We need to reach the resistance base, and when we do, we will begin. Just then, a small alert blinked on the ship's console, and the AI's calm voice filled the cockpit. Commander Marlowe, we are nearing the designated coordinates. A cloaked planet is ahead. We are approaching the resistance base. Jake sat up straighter. Finally. Let's get this over with. He turned to Lysara, eyes narrowing slightly. After we meet these resistance people, what then? Are they going to help us take down the Dominion? Lysara's smile faltered for a moment, and she looked away, her expression distant. It is not that simple. The resistance is fractured, many factions distrust one another, and some may not want to get involved in your fight. Some may even see you as a liability. Jake clenched his fists, a surge of anger flooding through him. Great. So we show up and they kick us out? There is always hope, Lysara said quietly. But not all hope is realized in the same way. Sometimes it requires convincing. Convincing them that you, your human strength, your resilience, can be the key to their salvation. Jake ran a hand through his hair. I'm starting to feel like I'm the bait in some cosmic game. Lysara's gaze softened, her voice quiet. Perhaps you are. But you are more than that, Commander. You are humanity's spark in a galaxy filled with darkness. You will not fail. The ship entered the cloaked zone, and ahead of them, a small planet appeared on the view screen. It looked serene, unremarkable, just another ball of rock and ocean in the vastness of space. But Jake could sense something different about it. There was a pulse to the world, a quiet vibrancy that hummed beneath the surface, almost like a heartbeat. He had no words for it, but something deep inside him told him they were exactly where they needed to be. Lysara didn't speak as they approached the planet's surface. She remained focused, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the console. Jake followed her lead, unsure of what to expect. AI, prepare for planetary entry, Jake ordered. Affirmative, the AI responded. Engaging atmospheric entry procedures. The Argonaut descended, cutting through the atmosphere of the planet with expert precision. Below them, a sprawling network of hidden settlements came into view, the resistance stronghold hidden within the dense forests and mountains. The sky shimmered with faint ripples of energy, creating an illusion that distorted the planet's surface, obscuring the true extent of its defenses. The ship touched down lightly on a large cleared area near a thick forest, the landing gear locking into place with a soft hum. The moment the ship powered down, the air around them seemed to grow still, the weight of impending decisions pressing down on Jake's chest. Here we are, Lysara said, her tone suddenly colder, more cautious. Be prepared for anything. Jake nodded, stepping out of the cockpit and into the cargo hold, his boots thudding softly against the metal floor. He glanced at Lysara one last time before they both made their way to the airlock. As the door hissed open, a blast of cool air hit him and Jake stepped out, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm he hadn't realized he'd been gripping. A group of figures stepped forward from the shadows, their faces obscured by hoods and masks. There were no introductions, no warm greetings, only wary eyes sizing them up. The leader, a tall woman with angular features and piercing blue eyes, took a step forward, her hand resting on the hilt of a large energy sword. Lysara, the woman said, her voice low and controlled. You've brought a human. Lysara nodded, her expression serious. This is Commander Jake Marlowe. He is more than just a human. He is the key to our victory. The leader studied Jake for a long moment before stepping closer, her eyes scanning him with an unreadable expression. I don't trust anyone easily, especially not a human. Jake straightened, meeting her gaze. Then you'll have to trust me because I'm the only chance you've got at stopping the Dominion. The tension was palpable, but Lysara's voice cut through the silence. We don't have time for games. We need to move now. The resistance leader studied her for another long moment, before giving a short nod. Come with us. We'll talk inside. As they followed the group into the resistance base, Jake's mind was a whirlwind of questions and fears. He was no hero. He wasn't even sure if he could handle the weight of the role thrust upon him. But he had no choice. The fight had already begun. And now he would face it head-on. Jake's boots clanked on the metal floor of the resistance base, echoing through the narrow, dimly lit corridors. The air was thick with tension. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of distrust, fear, and resolve. His eyes darted from shadowed corners to the wary faces of the resistance fighters who watched them as they passed. The base itself was a series of interconnected tunnels carved into the rocky heart of a mountain, lit by flickering overhead lights that cast long shadows on the walls. It was functional, efficient, but not a place of comfort. There were no banners or signs of hope, only survival. The woman who had greeted them, the leader of the resistance group, led them through the labyrinth of hallways. She didn't say a word, and neither did anyone else. Jake exchanged a glance with Lysara, who walked just a step behind him. Her presence was an ever-present reminder of the strange alien world he was now a part of. He still didn't understand what was happening, what made him so important, but he couldn't ignore the fact that everything was moving far too quickly. They entered a large, circular chamber. The ceiling was high, supported by thick beams, and the walls were covered in maps, schematics, and outdated computer terminals. A large central table was surrounded by resistance leaders, human and alien alike, each wearing the weary look of those who had been fighting a long, uphill battle. The leader of the group, the woman who had been so cold to Jake, stood at the head of the table, her gaze fixed on him. "Sit," she commanded. Jake hesitated for a moment before lowering himself into one of the chairs. Lysara seated herself beside him, her eyes constantly scanning the room. The tension in the air thickened, as if everyone was waiting for something. The woman, who Jake now realized was the true leader here, finally spoke. "You've brought us a human, Lysara. A man who claims to be able to help us defeat the Dominion?" Her voice was low, each word measured. "Explain yourself." Lysara didn't flinch under the scrutiny. "Commander Jake Marlowe is unlike any human I've encountered. His resonance is unique. The Dominion knows of him and they fear him." Jake cleared his throat, leaning forward. "I don't know what you think I can do. I'm not a soldier. I'm not a commander of armies. I'm just a guy who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You may not have the experience of a soldier, Commander, but you are something much more dangerous. The resonance you possess is not just a unique feature. It is a weapon. A key to breaking the Dominion's hold on the galaxy." Jake shook his head. "I don't know how to use it. I don't even understand what it is. What do you want me to do?" The leader's gaze softened slightly. "I've fought the Dominion for a long time. And I've seen weapons of all kinds, advanced tech, brute force, even subterfuge. But what we face is not just another enemy. The Dominion is a force of annihilation, and it has resources that would crush this entire resistance without a second thought. To defeat them, we need more than just soldiers. We need a force they cannot understand." She leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. "And that is where you come in." Jake looked at Lysara, who met his eyes with a look of quiet encouragement. "She's right," she said softly. "Your resonance, whatever it is, can disrupt their control over advanced technology. It is something they cannot replicate and something they cannot predict." The resistance leader continued, her voice steady but intense. "If we can harness this resonance, we can create weapons, disrupt Dominion communications, even hack into their most secure systems. We need you to train, to learn how to focus your energy, how to make it a tool." Jake ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know the first thing about controlling energy. I've never even—" "You don't need to understand everything right now," the leader interrupted. "We have the knowledge, the resources, and the people who can help you. What matters is that you are willing to learn, and that you're willing to fight." Jake's eyes drifted to the map spread across the table. Dots of red, indicating Dominion-controlled territories, marked nearly every corner of the galaxy. The scale of their power was staggering. And yet, here they were, a small band of rebels working in the shadows. He felt the weight of it, the enormity of the task they were asking him to undertake. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. But if he didn't help, if they didn't win, the Dominion would consume everything. And that meant humanity, his home, his people, would be wiped out without a trace. Jake exhaled slowly, the decision gnawing at him, the fear clawing at his chest. But one thing was clear, he couldn't walk away. He had already seen what the Dominion could do. He had already seen what they would do to him if they caught him. "All right," Jake said, his voice steady despite the chaos inside him. "I'll do it. I'll learn whatever I need to. But I'm not doing this alone. I need your help. All of you." He turned to the resistance members in the room. "We do this together." A murmur of approval rippled through the room, and the leader nodded. "Good. That's what we needed to hear." She stood up, motioning for the others to follow. Lysara, start his training. We'll need every second we can get. Lysara rose to her feet, her eyes glowing with a quiet determination. Come with me, Commander, she said, her voice soft but insistent. It's time to begin. Jake stood, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what the next step in this journey would bring, but he was past the point of no return. He would either rise to the challenge or be consumed by it. There was no middle ground. As he followed Lysara out of the room, he took one last glance at the map on the table. The Dominion might have all the power, all the resources, but they didn't have what he had. They didn't have humanity's greatest weapon, the strength to keep going no matter the odds. He wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not ever. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.